So if you've ever owned an Atari 2600, you may have noticed a couple titles under the branding Sears Tele-Games. Some of the cartridges even look exactly the same as Atari's versions, but under the Sears branding. And then some have slightly different names or different pictures, but when you actually play them, they're the exact same games. So why was Sears rebranding Atari's games, and what was the relationship between Sears and Atari? Well, I have the answer. Let's take a look.
What's going on, guys? It's Podrez coming at you with yet another video. So in the mid to late 70s, Atari was trying to get footing in the gaming industry. When they made their first home product, retailers didn't want to sell it. So Atari was in a little bit of a jam. But there was one company that gave them a chance: Sears. So we're going to talk about Atari's partnership with Sears and why this was important for both of them. So before we start, if you enjoy this video, feel free to leave a like. It helps out the YouTube algorithm. And if you enjoy retro content and obscure gaming stories, feel free to drop a subscription. It only takes a second on your part, but it helps me out greatly. Anyway, let's talk about Sears. Never thought I'd say that.
Over 150 video games so far. The Sears cartridge Tele-Game system. Sold only at Sears.
So it was 1974. With the success of Pong in the arcade, Atari focused on making a version you could easily play at home on any TV. After all, 97% of households in the US had a TV at the time, so this would be convenient for consumers. Harold Lee, with some help from Alan Alcorn, was able to make a working product, and they called it Home Pong. Atari showcased it to many toy and electronic retailers, hoping they would agree to sell it in their stores, but all of them rejected it. According to the retailers, the product was too expensive to sell, and customers wouldn't be interested in it. But Atari was still confident that they could find retailers who were interested. Someone from Atari noticed that Sears was advertising the Magnavox Odyssey in their catalog. The Odyssey was an older console that shared some similarities to Lee's new Home Pong project. Atari figured that if Sears liked the Odyssey so much, they would certainly enjoy the Home Pong console, so Atari got in touch with them and set up a meeting. Sears was very impressed with the product and offered them a deal. They agreed to sell the Pong console, but it would be a Sears exclusive under the Tele-Games branding. Initially, Atari declined the offer because they thought they could find a better deal, but after Atari failed to gain support for this product at the American Toy Fair, they came back knocking on Sears' door. Now that Atari had no choice, they made an agreement with Sears. They produced 150,000 units in time for the Christmas season. As originally discussed, the original Home Pong consoles were released under the Sears Tele-Games branding and would be exclusively sold at Sears, although Atari did create more versions later on under their own branding. The console was a massive success. It became Sears' most successful product at the time, and it caused many companies to make knockoff versions of it. As great as the Home Pong console was, though, there was a major flaw with it. It only plays one game. With all the competition out there, their consoles became obsolete quickly. Atari responded by making more upgraded versions of it, but the problem was still there. They were single game units with a short shelf life. So they came up with an idea. Why not make a console that's capable of playing many games? So at the time, programmable microprocessors were on the rise, and it was more feasible to make a dedicated unit that would play cartridges. Atari created a working product that was capable of playing their arcade games like Pong and Combat. This would eventually become the Atari VCS, or the 2600. With a working product on hand, Sears would become a distributor just like before, but this time it wasn't exclusive. Atari was allowed to sell their consoles at other retailers, and that's exactly what they did. But Sears and Atari still agreed on a deal that no other retailers had. Sears would distribute Atari's new console and games, but Sears would be allowed to use their own branding. I guess you could say this was Sears' reward for being the only company that had faith in Atari when they were releasing the home Pong console. They rebranded the Atari VCS to the Sears Video Arcade. They were also allowed 3 exclusive games: Steeplechase, Stellar Track, and Submarine Commander. Are these games any good, or did Atari give them the bargain bin games? Let's take a look. Steeplechase. It's a port of the arcade version. There's not much to say, you just gotta jump over the steeples and win the race. What's interesting about this game though, it supports up to 4 players. It gets boring fast, but if you're playing with 3 other friends, I could see this getting intense. It's awfully nice of Atari to give Sears one of their arcade ports. Stellar Track. So here you control a spaceship and you're supposed to destroy the aliens. The entire game is simply text-based, so it's without the graphics and without the fun. I mean, look at it. Would you want to play this? This is the whole game, too. It's not like there's a part where you're actually moving a spaceship or shooting aliens down. That would require a good game. I'm sure there's an audience for text-based games, I just think it's a small one. I don't think Atari minded giving up this game to Sears. And finally, Submarine Commander. You play as a submarine that's approaching enemy territory, and you must shoot down the enemies before you get shot yourself or run out of fuel. It's a first-person view where you can rotate 360 degrees and look for enemies. Basically, it's a poor man's battle zone. The scrolling is nice, the graphics are okay, and it's playable, but it's nothing special. So overall, I think Steeplechase is the best of the 3, but none of these games are super strong titles. Sears was hardly getting a good deal here, and it's clear that these were the reject games that Atari didn't mind giving to them. Super Breakout was initially a Sears exclusive, but later on, Atari started selling the game elsewhere. Had it remained an exclusive, it would have been huge for Sears because it's one of the best games on the console. I'm not surprised Atari took back their game and started selling it elsewhere. So even though it was called the Sears Video Arcade, it really wasn't any different from the VCS. It still played regular Atari VCS games. Sears would also rebrand some of Atari's other games. This is where things get kinda strange. Sears decided to rename some of Atari's titles as well. For example, when Atari released Video Olympics, which is basically just Pong with many variations, Sears renamed it Pong Sports. This I actually agree with. It made no sense why Atari would obscure a very profitable name. Atari's Breakout was renamed Breakaway 4. Not sure why they thought this was a good idea. Breakout's a well-known name, why change it? Atari's Video Pinball became Arcade Pinball. Kind of a pointless change, but whatever. Maybe Sears thought putting arcade in the name would sell more. Atari's game Dodge'em became Dodger Cars. Alright, I guess they needed to explain what you're dodging. The game Indy 500 was renamed to Race. These are the types of things you really can't make up. There's a bunch of other names that had name changes, but those are the ones I found interesting. Some games under the Sears branding kept the same name, but the artwork was changed. A handful of names kept the same title and artwork, but used the Tele-Games branding instead of Atari. There were also the text-only cartridges that didn't feature a picture at all. Atari sold cartridges like these as well, but Sears' versions usually had deceptive advertising. 50 games in one? Sure there is, definitely not just variations of the same game. So as we talked about before, the 3 exclusive games that Sears had weren't that great, and everything else that Sears had were basically just all products you could buy from other retailers. That would all change in 1983, however. So in Japan, Atari released the 2600 under the name Atari 2800. It was basically just a 2600 with some small upgrades. The controllers featured an all-in-one design with a joystick and a paddle, so you could play a paddle game like Breakout and then switch to combat without having to change your controller. Unfortunately for Atari though, this console was released right after Nintendo's Family Computer. The Family Computer was dominating the market in Japan, and Atari was not able to find the same success they had in the US. So while Atari never released the 2800 in the US, Sears had a different idea. Sears released the console and rebranded it as the Sears Video Arcade 2. It utilized the same controller that the 2800 had as well. It featured a more modern design that would later be used for the Atari 7800. In their initial release of the Video Arcade 2, they packaged it with 2 controllers and Space Invaders. That's a pretty good combination, an exclusive console paired with one of the best-selling games. So the Sears Video Arcade 2 was nothing special. It wasn't a whole lot different than the regular Atari 2600, but it was a nice little extra that Sears got. So what did Sears have to gain from this? Why resell the same console with a different coat of paint? Well, the Video Arcade, or Tele-Games, was a Sears private label. Department stores love having private labels that you can only buy there, similar to how brands like Kenmore and Die Hard are Sears exclusives. If you like a product label and you can only find it at one place, you're going to go to that store and only that store. More exclusive brands means more customers come to your store. Sears was the only company that had faith in Atari, and that's why they negotiated a deal with them. Sears gave Atari a platform that they didn't previously have. Sure enough, it worked out for both companies, because their home Pong consoles were extremely successful. Sears and Atari's partnership would continue with the 2600, where Sears was allowed to rebrand the console and games under their own name. Without Sears in the picture, Atari may never have been able to release their Pong consoles or the 2600 to a big audience.
Hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like rating. It only takes a second and it gets my video noticed by more people. Also, if you enjoy my content, drop a subscription. That way you'll be notified when my next video comes out. Plus, it's completely free. Finally, drop a comment if you have any questions, suggestions, or just want to share your gaming experiences. This greatly helps the YouTube algorithm, and I'm usually pretty good at replying back. Anyway, have a good one, guys.